Hi there, my name is Bonnie from Chaotically Organized. Today we will be talking about my February setup. Now this is already set up, and as I have mentioned in the past two videos, I faced some technical issues that was not solved by the time I set up February, and I did set this month quite in advance. It was barely the beginning of January when I had this done. I already also have March done, so yes, I'm having somewhat of a creative burst or surplus, you could say. So in today's video, I'm gonna talk about the theme, the process, and the supplies I use. If you're interested, keep watching. So let's talk about the theme first and how all of this came together, because it did come together quite fabulously. So I ran a few ideas by my sister regarding the month for the theme, and we settled on snow leopards, which I was really excited about because I had a plan to do snow leopards on gray paper. That way I would use both black and white ink for the actual animal rather than using just white on a black background or just black on a white background. So I was able to play with both on the gray background, which is something that I want to do a lot in this notebook. Now, one of the inspo pictures I came across on Pinterest had this leaf foliage or leaf motif, and I remembered that I had saved a typography or lettering image that had a similar vibe of the letter F, and I'll pop it on the screen. It's absolutely stunning. I saw it and I immediately saved it because I knew I would want to do it in my bujo at some point, and I just loved it. It's, I think, gilding is what it's called, the technique I mean, basically using loose gold leaf. And I do have loose gold leaf. I don't have the glue though, and I didn't want to attempt it in my own bullet journal and mess it up, so I just used paints. But anyway, it had similar vibes, so I decided that I'm gonna use that for February. And then I remembered that I saved this packaging from a Ferrero Rocher chocolate box that had some similar foliage and similar vibe, and I saved this purely because it was very beautiful. It was one of their special editions, I guess. I searched high and low for an image on Google of the actual packaging so that I can show it to you before I had cut it up, but I could not find it. I even reverse image searched the packaging and I couldn't find it. I do have a leftover piece that I did not use and I kept it for some reason. I decided that I would show it here, sort of like as a proof that this actually came from a chocolate box. But yes, it did. My mom thought I was crazy when I told my sister to keep the box for me, but when I showed her what I did with it, she was absolutely stunned. So yes, this was from the Ferrero Rocher, and it had the leaf motif, so all of it came together. So I immediately knew that that would be my theme for February, so that's what we did. This was the front of the packaging, and it had a circle already cut off so that the Ferrero Rocher logo would show through it, and I just simply cut a larger circle because I felt like I wanted to do a larger illustration. So that was quite simple. I cut it to size. It was actually quite perfectly sized for this notebook, for an A5 notebook. So I just had to cut it like length. I always mess up the areas, but yes, I had to cut it this way so that it would fit the notebook, and also cut the larger circle. Anyway, for the actual illustration, I went with this image and I absolutely loved it. There was some extra leaves on the other side, but I excluded that from my actual illustration, and then put the F sort of like behind the snow leopard, and it turned out absolutely beautiful. Now for the supplies I used for the snow leopard, I went with watercolors, and I obviously used the white and the black. I also mixed it with some gouache paint, just so that I would use a few less layers, especially for the white. It was actually quite simple and a lot of fun to paint the snow leopards. So I'm gonna have a sort of a tutorial, quote unquote, of how to paint the snow leopards coming out soon, so stay tuned if you're interested. But it was absolutely very, very simple. I had the basic shape traced in and then basically gave a straight wash of white everywhere, and then I used the black to add all of the spots, which was quite random, and I was worried about that because sometimes I obsess over these things, but it was actually quite easy to achieve. And I did use some larger brushes, mainly size 10 and size 9. I also probably use size 8, but I have that in a cup with some blue paint that I have not washed yet, so I can't show you, but it's from the same brand, A5. Love their brushes. I almost exclusively use round pointy brushes like this, and the larger the brush is, the messier and more random your tiny details will be. And yes, even those very, very, very tiny spots were done with a larger brush, so don't estimate the power of larger brushes. But that was for the snow leopard. And even the outline I did with the brushes, by the way. Wanted to mention that because I was surprised at how good of an outline I could get with a larger brush. And then for the F and the leaf motif, somebody, a lovely person over on Jashi Kern's Discord, notified me that I should try and match the gold of the packaging with the gold that I'm gonna use. And obviously I don't have a gold like this. I'm gonna show you my pen swatch page. So we have this gold, which is too yellowy in comparison, and then I ended up mixing it with the white shimmer, and that gave me somewhat of a better match. It's still not an exact match, but I like it more than I would have if I had used the gold straight away. It would have been much more obvious that they are two golds, but now sort of when the light hits it, when the light hits it, oh my god, when the light hits it at the right angle, it is very, very similar. So I did that for all of the leaf motif and the F typography thingy lettering on the other pages as well. So this is the gold, or like the shimmer paint I used. I used the gold and the white shimmer. This is a silver, by the way, but because I mixed the gold with the white so often, it's looking somewhat goldy. But yes, this is what I used for all of the leaf motif and the F. Absolutely stunning. And then for some reason, I decided that I wanted to write 2024 in sort of like a signature typography thingy. Except I absolutely messed up the 4 and it looks awful, but I have no way of fixing it. So we're just gonna roll with it. And you know, we go by what Bob Ross said. There are no mistakes, only happy accidents. And if you're wondering, I did use a brush pen for this, and I used the thinnest or slimmest I own, which is size 23. Moving on from the cover page, we have my monthly log. So we have a space for my internship notes and also my monthly calendar. And this layout actually went some phases because my calendar was supposed to be on this page with the arch, and so is the second leopard here and the F. But I just couldn't figure out a spacing of the calendar that would fit nicely under the arch and still have space for the leopard in the size that I wanted, so I ended up just switching things up. So let's talk about this first. This is some of the leftover packaging from the front cover of the packaging. The same thing basically, the rest of the circle, except that obviously here I did it bigger. But anyway, this was the original sizing, you could say. And I ended up cutting 2 strips of the gold just so that the arch would continue all the way down the page, because I felt it was awkward just stopping it here, especially since it did not end in a point. So if the circle ended here, I probably would not add these 2. Sort of bother me that they are not connected, and it's obvious that I, puzzled the pieces together, but also I'm trying to curb my perfectionism, so we're gonna keep that there. I ended up writing my title down at the bottom, which again is something I'm doing a lot lately and I love. I just wrote internship commonplace. Basically, all of my internship is gonna go here. And I did use the same brush pen in a sort of scribbly, swift cursive, if that makes any sense. Anyway, I don't go carefully when I write. I literally just write it as quickly as I can without literally messing it up. And I get this font that I actually quite like, and it was the font that I used throughout the month. On the monthly calendar page, I have this, which is actually from here. So this was the back, and I had cut it in a squiggly thing, but I did not end up liking it, so I just cut a straight edge. Anyway, eliminated the curves, whichever you would call it, and then we were left with this page. And I immediately, as soon as I placed it on the page, I knew that the illustration can go here and it would look absolutely perfect. So I ended up going with this leopard in this position in accordance to the image that I'm gonna pop on the screen. It had a sister, but I removed the sister. We only have this one leopard and the one leaf. And I ended up repeating the F because it was too beautiful to do only once, but I also ended up doing it thrice, so there's that. But yes, it just felt like I could add something here to fill the space, and the F was absolutely perfect. So same thing, I used the watercolors to do the leopard, the white and the black, and then the mix of gold shimmer and white shimmer to do the F and the leaf. I actually did this page twice prior to gluing the cardboard packaging thing down, because I accidentally drew the calendar one too many lines down and it went over my leopard, and I absolutely hated it and I was very upset about it until I redid the leopard, and the second attempt turned much nicer than the first attempt, which I think I have a picture of the original one where I had accidentally messed up. So maybe if I can find it, I'll put it on the screen. I think I accidentally did some weird thing at the back of the head, so it ruined it somewhat, but with the second attempt it got fixed. And then I drew the calendar, which I traced from another setup of mine from the last or the previous July. And let's see the measurement of this calendar. It is 2 centimeters by 1.5, and I think this should be enough space for me. I ended up doing some gold, or like a gold line right here. Not really sure why. I did something sort of similar in January, and also I wanted to pull some gold upwards here, so I did it. It looks really cool, so I don't mind it. And then I used the same swift cursive, I guess we're going to call it that, for the days of the month or days of the week. Flipping over to my monthly dashboard. Now sometimes I have my lists with my calendar on the same page, sort of like what I had in January. Sometimes I separate them purely based on aesthetics and what I want to include. So in this one, since I wanted the calendar on this page and I ended up giving an entire page for my internship details, I decided to do my monthly dashboard on a separate page. And when I do that, I usually pull the trackers, this page, from the back or from the end of the setup to the front, I guess. I am a little bit disoriented or discombobulated today. It's currently 7 p.m. and I've been up since 7 a.m. so that could be why. But anyway, I always have these 4 lists for the most part, I guess. We have one for finance, one for freelance, one for university tasks, and one for general tasks, which I put under to get to tasks. So I did a very simple setup, just separated the page into 4 sections to maximize the space for each section, and then I put a very, very small line of gold under each header and used the same brush pen with the swift cursive for the headers. Put 2 at the top and 2 at the bottom, because for some reason that looks better in my eyes rather than having the headers here. So yeah. And then for the tracker, this is basically the outfits worn and the books read. And I did this layout previously in my last year's Bujo, and I absolutely loved it. It's my favorite variation of this tracker, where I have a circle for each day of the week. And I usually use this when I use an external medium for the setup, like with this one, the gold from the packaging. I did it in April of last year with some white paper because I had white paper in the setup. I used it in August of last year because I had silver paper as part of the setup. So yeah, I just took the packaging and hole punched a bunch of circles, or 29, because it's a leap year, which was a good opportunity to do a frog theme, except I don't really like a frog theme. It doesn't sit well in my head. So yeah, did the same header, just a simple gold line, which is more white than gold in this version. Yeah, that's one thing I don't like about mixing my own shimmers, because I don't get an even color every time, but also I'll just get over it. So we have in the same Swift cursive, outfits worn and books read. Also, this paper doesn't really take ink well, so I ended up using the back of my X-Acto knife and sort of scoring the numbers. If I hold it this way at a certain angle, I can actually read the numbers, but I'm not really sure how clear that is on camera. The page after that is my first set of weeklies, and don't really ask me what's up with this layout. I don't really like it. I'm tolerating it and also keeping it for the simple reason that I'm not gonna, I don't have any plan to do anything about it, I guess. But I wanted to use this big rectangle with the rounded corners because I wanted to do it on the monthly review, but I also like to repeat elements at least twice in each setup. So I decided to do this weekly in this style, except I don't really know what's up with this layout. So we have the rounded corner big rectangle thingy, separated it into 6 sections with a joint weekend. For some reason connected the corners, sort of felt like it when I was setting it up. And then when I was trying to move on, I decided, oh, let's add some gold. And how do I do that? This way. I'm not really sure what's up with this. And here's where the inconsistency with mixing the paint really gets me, because you can see areas here that are more white than gold, and then you can see areas here that are more gold than white. And it's sort of sometimes I like it and the other times I don't. It's a really weird layout, but I'm not gonna do anything about it again. This layout, however, I absolutely love. So this is week 3 and week 4, and thank God thank God February has only 4 weeks. Cut down on the setup process by quite a bit. So this one I absolutely love, and I saw it on Pinterest in a toned tan or a craft notebook, and I loved it for some reason. Decided to try it out. I absolutely love it. So I actually used a stencil to sort of make my life easier, but also not really, because it did not go with the exact measurements of the stencil. So the small rectangles are the header for the mini calendar of this stencil, but this outline is the header of the bigger mini calendar, except it's not exactly an exact measurement, if that makes any sense. Basically, I put it this way and drew this line and this line, then moved it a bit and drew this line and this line. I ended up using the white watercolor to color the smaller boxes with the white, and I feel like that really brought everything I love about using gray notebook into one spread, and it's the fact that I can use both white and black. And anyway, this spread just looks so beautiful. I love it. It's so simple, but I still love it. I ended up adding a big section here with some rounded corners to tie that element in for my internship notes. Then we have my monthly review with that larger rounded corner box thingy, and I ended up writing February in its full form for the first time in this setup, funnily enough. So February's review right at the top, and I wrote it in that same Swift cursive type font, you could say. And then, because I was absolutely loving painting the snow leopards, I decided that I wanted to do it one last time in this pose, I guess, because I think this was the first inspo picture about this idea that I saw. So I decided that I wanted to do it still. And obviously I had to add the F. I just had to. For me, it sort of looks like the snow leopard is pushing F out of the page because February is finishing. This is how I see it anyway. So same steps, same everything. It was a lot of fun. There is something that looks off about this variations. I think I should add some shadows in this area. It looks somewhat off, but also I'm not gonna do anything about it. And then same steps for the F and the leaf motif. Absolutely stunning. This is the painting that I'm gonna do in a future video, so if you're interested in seeing how I painted it, definitely subscribe and stay tuned. Let's take a look at February from the very beginning. But that is it. Thank you so much for joining me today. If you like this format of videos or bullet journaling videos, definitely subscribe and follow me on Instagram and tell me what your theme for February is. And if you post it somewhere, definitely direct me to it so that I can support you in return. Also, one last thing before I leave, I tried some different lighting setup. You could say I turned off one of the lights in my room, and that way I got rid of the shadow of my phone mount, which is usually here, and it gets over the page and kind of annoying. So if you find the lighting for this video is good, it doesn't bother you, doesn't seem off, definitely also let me know in the comments. And if it does, also let me know so that I can, you know, go back to my regular lighting setup, you could say. But yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.